Well, a bipartisan inquiry is recommending the federal government declare all of Hezbollah a terrorist organisation. The group's external security organisation has already been relisted under the criminal code, but the inquiry raised concerns Australia was falling behind its Five Eyes partners in listing the entire organisation. Well, joining me here in the studio now for more is Liberal Senator James Paterson. Senator, good to see you. Thanks for your time this morning. So why the move for all of the organisation and not just part of it?
Well, the evidence we received before the inquiry was that it's no longer tenable to distinguish between the external security organisation on one hand and the rest of the organisation on the other. In fact, Dr Matthew Levitt, one of the world-renowned experts on Hezbollah, said there's no plausible intellectual case to distinguish them. It's an arbitrary distinction. And Hezbollah is run by the Shura Council, headed by Hassan Nasrallah, and Hezbollah itself has said the Shura Council and Hassan Nasrallah direct all of the activities of Hezbollah, including the ESO. So the delicate balancing act that Australia's had in the past, I think, is becoming untenable when New Zealand, Canada, the United States, the United Kingdom, the European Union, France, Germany, the Arab League, the Gulf Council all go further than we do and list at least the military wing of Hezbollah, if not the whole organisation.
So what does that actually mean for them if we are declaring the whole of it a terrorist group?
Well, first and foremost, it's an important declarative statement on behalf of Australia that we don't tolerate terrorism, and it's a really strong moral stand. But secondly, it's relevant sometimes for law enforcement. There is a case in New South Wales last year where a New South Wales man was convicted of other violent offences, but was also observed having Hezbollah materials. And New South Wales police sought from the court a high-risk terrorist offender control order. The court denied them that because the court wasn't able to determine whether this man's support was just for the political wing of Hezbollah or whether it was for support for the external security organisation. Had Hezbollah been listed at the time as a terrorist entity in its hold, it looks like they would have got that order. So there is practical considerations for Australia.
And would that mean too, travel bans if someone was linked to not just the militant wing of Hezbollah, but the political wing, that they wouldn't be able to travel here or anything like that? Would there be pauses on that?
It activates a couple of things. So if you're an Australian citizen trying to support Hezbollah, then you will obviously be of much greater interest to our security and law enforcement agencies if the whole organisation is listed. You can't simply say, well, my fundraising for Hezbollah in Australia was just for the political wing or its social work if it's declared as a terrorist organisation. Or I should say there are terrorist financing controls already implemented by AUSTRAC, which are much broader than the terrorist listing, but that doesn't mean we should allow this inconsistency to persist.
So what's the road now to actually making this official?
So we've made a recommendation to government, and it's up to government to respond as they see fit. It goes a step further than our recommendation in 2018, which said it should list the military wing, and we're hopeful that the government will positively consider our recommendation.
A new poll overnight talking about Australia's trust in China. It's moved down to all-time lows now, so it's not just businesses and politicians talking about this. Is this an indication that people, the punters out there, believe that they're not trustworthy?
It is. It's a stunning and dramatic reversal of the standing of the Chinese government in Australia in just a few years. And really, Peter, it is the wolf warriors reaping what they have sowed. Australians have seen what's happening in Hong Kong, seen the aggression towards Taiwan, heard about Xinjiang and Tibet and other things, and they're not putting up with it anymore, and it's completely understandable.
Barnaby Joyce mentioned yesterday that he called for the Libs and the Nats to unite, of course, but he says that we can't rely on the US to guarantee regional security when it comes to this. Is he right?
Well, every country, Australia included, must do everything it can to secure its own security. I'm a big believer in the US alliance, though, a vital one to our strategic interests. And the truth is, without the United States, we would be much more exposed than we are. Just the intelligence sharing relationship on its own is invaluable, let alone the security guarantee of that alliance. So it's vital that we maintain it. But of course, we have to do everything we can ourselves to protect our own sovereign interests.
Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't want to get into another war. But if it was us who was caught up in something, that you'd still have to expect them to help us out.
I frankly think it's inconceivable that Australia would be left alone to face an adversary without our strongest allies and friends in the United States. Public opinion in the United States is very warm towards Australia. The support for Australia across the administration and the Congress and elite public opinion in the United States is incredibly strong.
Yeah. Is China meddling in the reef now?
I think it's pretty hard to draw any other conclusion, given that the reef hasn't been on an in danger watch since 2015. The UNESCO hasn't visited the reef since 2012. It is now chaired by China, and all of a sudden, without proper process or due notice, they're saying they might list it again. I mean, Australia doesn't take lectures on climate change from any other country, but we particularly don't take it from the world's largest emitter.
When something is chaired by China, I mean, we just talked about trust falling to new lows now. Does credibility start to be lost when something like that is said, and what does that mean for UNESCO?
Well, a couple of years ago, the Prime Minister gave a speech at the Lowy Institute where he talked about negative globalism, and this is exactly what he had in mind, the way in which some international organisations can be subverted from their proper purpose for other means. And this is a perfect example of how the rules-based order is being undermined by rising authoritarian powers who are trying to reshape it in their own interests and divert them from their actual proper mission. UNESCO has an important mission protecting heritage sites globally. That's what it should focus on, not get involved in geopolitics.
Well, Qatar says we pull out of it.
Yeah, look, I mean, I hope that's not necessary. I hope that UNESCO comes to its own good senses and doesn't go where the chair is leading it.
Well, are we doing enough to protect the reef?
I think the evidence is clearly that we are. In response to previous potential listings, we were very strong on this. I have to say, though, I was really disappointed with the Deputy Premier of Queensland, Stephen Miles' comments today. I wouldn't thought it's too much to ask the Deputy Premier of Queensland to take Australia's side in this dispute, not China's side.
All right. Senator James Paterson, good to chat. Talk to you soon.